Morning everybody, it's a sunny Friday here in Brisbane. It's not quite beer o'clock, but Brad's managed to get some time together for me and for you as the audience to talk things about business, growth, strategy, learn from his success. So Brad, thanks for coming along.
Hey mate, good to see you mate.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Catch up from time to time.
Thank you. So here to, firstly I guess dive into a little bit of your background. Like I said, Wizard Home Loans was the first big success that you had, or was it the first big success? Humble beginnings back in Western Sydney, Wentworthville?
Yeah, that area. A boy from Western suburbs of Sydney, and I kind of have a saying, you can take the boy out of the West, but you can't take the West out of the boy. So probably just learnt through the school of hard knocks that every opportunity you get, you take with both hands and do your best with it. Firm believer in hard work, roll your sleeves up. Every conversation you have is one that you can learn from. Yeah. Even this morning.
Always. Do you look at your life now and the things that you've achieved, did you ever see that as a kid growing up? Did you think, you know what, I want to get involved in business and do really big things? Was it just it started as a small thing and it grew into a big thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I won't pretend that at 16 years old I had a master plan at all. First member of my family ever to matriculate to university. Yeah. So you know, we weren't taught that you could have careers. Unfortunately for me, that meant my expectations were fairly low. Somehow, by virtue of maybe getting to university, doing 6 months there, delaying that because I couldn't afford to go, and then went and worked in a bank and met a couple of blokes there who just, I looked and thought, hang on, these guys are not much different to me, but they're kind of successful. Yeah. Why don't I aspire to be something a little bit better? And then I kind of dared to dream, I guess, compared to where I'd come from. And don't get me wrong, great family, great grandfather, father, brother, sister, mum. But you know, aspiration wasn't what we had. It was perspiration. You just had to work bloody hard. Yeah. So yeah, and then we kind of, from that point of view, I guess, to me it was just about doing the best, being honourable about what you do, real values-based kind of upbringing. But you know, the concept of being really successful wasn't it. It was just about providing for your family as much as anything else. Yeah.
I think you've touched. So I think that's a really common thing for business owners in Australia. A lot of business owners don't have the aspirations to run a publicly listed company, have hundreds of staff, do the volume of business that you've done. They want to make a better life for their family. I listened to an article or a video that you had put out where you said, starting Wizard Home Loans, we believe that every Australian has a simple dream. We want to own our own home and provide for our family and do simple things like that, and they weren't getting that service. Do you think a lot of business owners are feeling that pressure of, they wanted just that simple, a business which is running, matches their skill set, provides for their family, but there's pressure that things have to be bigger and have to be bigger? Do you see that in the marketplace?
You do. I mean, that story we had was everyone wanted to put a comfortable roof over their head and retire. Well. You know, it's a simple dream, and that's what we try to achieve with our businesses. But you know, when I look at business owners today, it's complex running a business, and it's complex employing staff, and it's complex dealing with customers and supply chain management. And I think that people want to do, they want to provide for their families, but they also want the fun of running a business. They want the fun of getting new clients. I think they underestimate how hard it is and how much hard work there is that's just straight old-fashioned administration, straight old-fashioned planning. Yeah. And you and I have talked about this. Most of the businesses we see that don't go well are businesses that fail to plan, fail to think about how it's going to work out day to day, month to month, year to year, and hope to be very successful for a long period of time.
Yeah. We've talked about this in depth outside of here, but with that failing to plan, and you and I guess, aligned in this point of the strategy, developing the strategy is only one piece. It's that 90% of executing towards it, and what are we doing every day? Yeah. Is that where you see the gap in it? Because the execution is not the sexy part?
Exactly. I mean, everyone wants to do the sexy stuff. They want to sit down to a strategy day. They want to go and meet new clients. They want to, you know, take a bloke out to lunch or go away for a conference. Your job is 99% execution. It's the operating rhythm of your business, how often you meet with your sales team, how do you look at your supply chain, are you in the factory, shop floor, checking what's really going on. And that the businesses that I see over time that succeed and grow have really got their finger on the pulse. They've got good teams that know their job, and they stress that at all times, the importance of role, responsibility. They get feedback, they're open to listening, and they ask really great questions. Yeah. And the ones that kind of boom and bust are the ones that just get caught up in the growth, the sales, and forget about the back end.
Yeah. So there's a lot of pieces to growing, obviously. You just touched on a lot of them, but I want to dive in a little bit to teamwork and leadership and the result for that, and how as a business owner, a lot of people have started a business and they've got a great technical skill set and they've got a great understanding of this is how I can do what I do. But at some point, as the business grows, they've got to start to disperse that knowledge into staff. Yeah. How was that a journey for you?
I think I remember one day waking up and realising I was no longer running a business, I was running a group of people.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I was kind of comfortable with that in the early days. I liked the fact that I could do, and then I realised I had to be an influencer of others.
Yeah.
So for a long period of time, when people joined our business, they were joining a couple of people who'd started it, which is great.
Yeah.
As you got bigger and bigger and bigger, they were just joining a company.
Yeah.
So your influence on the individual was less. But it took me a long time to work out how to work with people, how to manage them.
Yeah.
And then realise that you don't manage people, you lead them, which means you let them self-manage to a degree.
Yeah.
Set clear objectives, get their feedback, listen, develop it with them. But good leadership is about getting direction, giving people the running rails to operate in, but giving them some autonomy.
Yeah.
But every now and then have a structure of checking in to make sure it's working for them and working for you. Most good leaders step back and let people do. Most good managers get hands-on and sometimes get in the way of leverage and success. And therefore, why you got employees if you're kind of trying to over-manage them.
Yeah.
But it was hard for me.
Yeah. What was a point? Was there a point where you just said, you know what, I have to get better at this, or it's just not going to work? What was the trigger for you where you said, you know what, maybe I don't like this, but I've got to do it?
Yeah, the trigger for me, I can't remember a specific day, but just a period of time when we were going through a very large transaction, when we were bringing our first investor into the business. And we just were simply not capable of doing that and trying to manage the business day to day. There wasn't enough hours in the day. So the compromise was forced upon me to say, I need to liberate others to take some ownership.
Yeah.
And to a degree that taught me, then I had to put a plan in place to make sure that they knew what to do when I wasn't there telling them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't some stroke of genius. I didn't read the books to get it. It was a situation that forced me into that, and I learnt more from that than someone else telling me.
You mentioned the School of Hard Knocks, plenty of lessons learned through that way. How do you juggle learning from failure versus trying to learn from other people and mentors around you to try and short circuit that so you don't have to fall? Like the School of Hard Knocks is great, and I'm a very
can be very
student.
Expensive though.
Yeah, it's a very expensive school though. How's the process from going, okay, well, yes, I'm going to learn things the hard way, but was there a conscious choice at some point for you to go, you know what, I've actually got to work a bit harder to start to proactively see these things?
Yeah, I think for me it's been about having a mind that can learn, because really education is about a process of being open to learning.
Yeah.
And knowing that you don't just look for learning, you let it come to you sometimes.
Yeah.
I still buy the papers and read them every day because I'm not just looking for one thing, I just want to see what's happening in the world, and you never know what you can learn. I think as a younger guy I wasn't as good at that. I wasn't able to do my job, which was really intense, and still think what else is in the world and what could I learn by reading that book or reading that article. I was myopically focused on doing.
Yeah.
I was a really good doer.
Yeah.
To be successful, ultimately though, I had to be a good thinker.
Yeah.
And learn, change my opinion, be a little bit less arrogant, and that meant that I was able to learn not through mistakes, but through others, other people, other ideas, other businesses. So it's just maturity, it really is.
There's a self-awareness there from your side of things. You go, you know what, I was a bit arrogant. I thought I was doing a bit better than I really was. I was bloody good. I'm kicking a few goals here. Was there a point where you had some mentors or people around you that stepped in and really made a conscious effort with you?
I didn't at the time realise that they were mentors. They were people that the business helped put around me to help me get better.
Yeah.
There's a little story I had. I was a great sales guy, and that meant that as a sales guy, sell ice to the Eskimos, sand to the Arabs, and I always knew every answer because as a salesman, I thought you needed to be able to answer everything. And I remember having a conversation with a fellow, I won't say his name, but it was very kind of learned, and he said, listen, never bullshit a bullshitter. At some stage as a sales guy, you're not going to have the answer. And the fact that you propose you've got the answer every time means you're going to lose the integrity, your reputation. And I kind of started saying, hey, reputation, I thought about that, and I realised from a family point of view, that was everything.
Yeah.
So I said, so what I was trying to do was please by being a good sales guy, but I was kind of negating the fact that I'm an expert in some things, not everything. So to grow up was actually, through that mentor engagement, the biggest thing I learnt was you're not an expert in everything, and the strongest people admit what they're not good at or what they don't know, and they find a path to get it either through themselves or through others. But that mentor relationship was the best learning I had at 26, 27 years old.
Yeah. Do you think that vulnerability obviously plays into the leadership side of things, and an ability to leverage that vulnerability of, hey, I don't know everything, but I'm good, this is my piece, and this is what I'm good at. Do you think that flows back into your leadership ability and then helping get those people around you to say, hey, well, we like Brad, and Brad's real good at that thing, but Brad's also humble enough to recognise that he's not the be-all and end-all at everything?
I think when personally I'm at my best as a leader, I can be like that.
Yeah.
But to be frank, when the pressure's on, my leadership style can break down because I'll try to be a person that gets involved a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And that's massively demotivating to people around me because they want to be valued.
Yeah.
So I constantly have to redress that. I constantly have to stop and moderate that innate behaviour that said, look, I'm like from the West who kind of made it, and I got some skills, I want to deploy them because I want to get things done.
Yeah.
Versus, hang on, the best way to get things done is with others and for others, because you get it done multiple times with more effect. So as a leader, I try to do that. I'm not perfect at it, I guarantee you. And if you talk to people who've worked with me, they'll often square me up a little bit and say, listen, you say one thing, can you make sure you do it?
You've touched on something there as well, which is balance. And I think when you talk about leadership, sales, we can take any aspect of the business. I don't think balance comes from a stagnant point. Your leadership style there's times where you're going to be vulnerable and give people their room and let them fall on their face. But then there's also a time for balance where it's like, okay, this is the circumstances. We need somebody to really drive this, take action. This is going.
Yeah.
How do people know when to put their foot on which pedal, so to speak?
Yeah, it's obviously depend a lot upon your circumstance, but I think that is probably one of the challenges for people in leadership roles or leading businesses. When is the right time for me to be decisive and take action versus seek to do it through others? And as long as you're consistent, I think, and you address that I'm doing this now for this purpose, and let's regroup after it, you can get away with it. But if you do it systemically, then people eventually just give up. They'll say, you're not giving me autonomy, you don't trust me, you're devaluing what I can deliver, and you'll end up spending most of your time recruiting because they won't want to work in your team. It is about balance, and I think it's about being pretty deliberate around it and saying, listen guys, we've got an issue. As a leader, I'm going to step up and deal with this. I have a style where I sometimes will overtly sweat the small stuff in almost a parody way, but when something big goes wrong, I'll be the calmest person in the room, which for me that works because the team becomes relaxed in that environment. And the differential between those two styles is something that they see in C's illustration, and they don't understand that I'm doing it, but I'm doing it for them regardless. So it'll come down to the way you set the framework with the team and be deliberate about it.
Is that just with a team, somebody needs to look at you and go, when the proverbial shit has hit the fan, so to speak,
as it often does,
you as the leader have to be in a position to go, okay, this is what we're going, you're not the person who's hesitant at that point. That's your point to go. This is what's happening.
And that's where you've got to be careful not to be seen as a great problem solver or a great leader. You can be both, but you've also got to be careful that sometimes the solution isn't best served by you dealing with it. Not because you want to be egalitarian and but you might actually have an expert in the room that's going to be much better than you. That's why I make sure I understand the way people think. So in that instance, a big problem, you might have a guy or a lady in your team who's a real engineer-minded person. I call them an owl. They'll take their time to think about a problem. Let them have the problem overnight and manifest on it. They'll bring a great solution in the morning. You ask them to come to you straight away in 5 minutes to do it, you're not honouring the way they're wired. their personality profile. So yeah, I like to solve problems. It's fun, but sometimes I'm not the right person. Sometimes I'm not the right skill level. Often that's the case. So my leadership style is I'll try and identify people that have got the skills to solve the problem we've got. Mostly it's about organising the way you're thinking about it, not just the solution. Because if you organise, you can solve lots of stuff. If you fluke at an outcome, doesn't mean you can do it again tomorrow.
Doesn't make much difference.
No, it doesn't make. I mean, one success doesn't make a business success.
That's the old football ad. You're only as good as your last game.
Yeah, or your last tackle in some.
In some instances.
It's a long time for you between football careers, mate.
I was only talking about this last night. It's been 10 years since I pulled on the jerseys, but it's like those principles are still with me in a lot of the way that the principles that you still have.
I mean, you've got the principal team is bedded in what you're talking to me about. That you understand the importance of being part of something.
Yeah.
I think that's something that every kid should end up playing some kind of team sport.
Yeah.
Because they understand the concept of they rely upon you, you rely upon them. I know my role, you know yours.
Yeah.
And I turn up for you at training, in the games and after the game. I don't criticise you when you do something poor.
Yeah.
I work out a way that we can find out how to do it better. But that's teamwork.
I've got a bias to that because of my background, but I love interviewing people. But when I'm interviewing people or recruiting somebody for a role, anybody that's had that experience as in any kind of sport, I don't care what it is, but if you've played some kind of team sport, it embeds in you the vision of giving yourself to something bigger, which is a massive...
Which is what successful businesses do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, don't get me wrong. There's some times you're going to find an individual that you didn't want to let free. They've got great skill set. You know that there are certain type of personnel that won't work with others, but you just give them a project and they go batshit and get it done. They're not going to turn out longer term in team environments. Yeah. But that's okay. That skill set works. But to build a big momentum, recurring positive environment, you want team-focused people. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, you've then got to balance that with people who want personal success.
Yeah.
You don't want someone who will always take a team view. You want some personal exertion focus. That'll get you that strive element that you need to get that little bit extra from your people. But as long as they're doing it for both joint and personal success, that's why you set your objectives around team and personal, so that people have got that balanced view.
Yeah. Speaking of objectives, talk to me about systems and processes. Different size business.
The boring stuff.
The boring stuff, right? But I think if we come back to an objective base, one of the things that I like to work with businesses is go, what are the objectives that you're trying to give people? How can we give somebody some freedom to work within their own scope so that they have some ownership of it, and they haven't got I have to do A, then B, then C, then D. I have to get to D, and here's my rules that I have to play by. How do you juggle that with a different size of business? When you've got a 15 staff business at some point versus a couple of hundred staff, the requirements change. How do you juggle that?
Yeah, there's a little saying, structure liberates. So first and foremost, get the structure right. So define the process, define the customer journeys, define the steps. Document them, because that's your intellectual property. Yeah. And if you don't have a document, it's not of any value. And when you're thinking about building a business, you want to build a business that's got value, whether it be for you to maintain it, to get revenue and dividends, or for you to sell that business as an exit strategy. But once you've got the structure, you can liberate. You can let people work within the framework as long as they know the structure. So, I think being too loose means that you're going to have inefficiencies, risk, error rates. But once you get the structure right, once you define the way that things need to be done, then you give people the opportunity to work within that framework and be a little bit more autonomous. Yeah. But, this is where, you've got to be pretty brutal around it. You've got to go back and check that the way that it's working today is the way you designed it.
Yeah.
So you get this little proposition I know is you get what you inspect, not what you expect. Yeah. So go back and check that it's working the way you wanted it to, not to sit back and say, I expect it to work out okay.
Yeah.
You can't outsource that.
I love that, and I've used that from you. You've mentioned that to me before, and I
borrowed it from someone else too.
Yeah. Are there any original thoughts left?
No, none left in the world.
It's just how we apply them.
See, I think sometimes people fall in love with being the next new idea. I don't care where an idea comes from. I care about how you execute it.
Yeah.
I fall in love with ideas all the time, but if I can't work out a way to execute it, they're here today, gone tomorrow. Yeah. So, something borrowed is better than something that you come up with and then you can't execute on. Yeah. So that fail point. Don't get caught up in being the next best different thing. Be the next success story.
Yeah. Good times. Risk.
Yeah, risk.
You touched on it. How do you? It's a balance thing again.
Oh, it's hard.
How far do you stretch yourself? How far do you want to stay in your comfort zone? Are there rules? How have you done it?
I mean, I once got told by someone, unless you're an expert in risk, don't pretend you know. But I kind of think over time I turned that a little bit into try to work out where your risks are, be aware of them, and either be aware that you can accept them because they're reasonable, or find a way to mitigate them because they're not reasonable. In other words, what can kill you? And if it doesn't kill you, it can only make you stronger. Sound like a bloody broken record on old sayings today. But so for me, you've got to be smart when it comes to risk. If you're not the right person to assess it, find someone who is. Find an advisor or an expert who can come in and say your risks are going to be that: cash flow management, supply chain management, market changes, legislation, etc. And you might not be the expert to do that. It's okay. But the smart people identify that and say, get someone in to help me understand that. And then think about my contracts with my employees, my suppliers, my customers. Think about the way I review legislation. I get advice from my compliance people, my tax people, my lawyers. And it sounds all expensive, but I'll tell you what, getting it wrong is more expensive.
That's a nugget. So if you think good advice is expensive, try not getting it.
Yeah. So I mean, and people talk to me all the time about, I can't afford to do that, I've got scarce resources. Every business in the world has scarce resources. It's just a scale piece. And it's all about prioritising what you work on.
How much do you think people get bogged? My risk tolerance and my risk profile is different to your risk profile in the same way that the value is different, and everybody's running their own race. Do you think people get caught up in the fact that they're too busy looking over the fence at, that's how they do it, so that's how I have to do it, that's how they do it, that's how I should do it?
Yeah, and look, I think you're right, and that kind of envy piece, and particularly in the social media world where you can see what everyone's doing all the time. And I don't understand that sometimes because you don't know the full context of what's happening in any other environment, rarely. So to actually be envious of what's happening in another environment without understanding it is kind of crazy because you don't have all the data points to assess that. So just be an expert in your own business. Find out things you need to know to make your business better. And if someone has a good process, investigate it, mystery shop it, do the research. I find it amazing when people come to me to interview for roles and they haven't researched my business. They haven't researched the challenge I've got. Don't give them the time of day. But people who do really excite me, going, you've spent 2, 3, 4 hours, a couple of days, you've researched a business I'm in, you've mystery shopped, etc. And you think that's a mindset that says I want to learn, I want to get better, and I want to show respect to the opportunity I've got. So don't be envious, just research, find good things that work, but focus on yourself.
Good things that work. You've seen businesses of all sizes, all shapes. Is there a similarity around, there's usually the key drivers of this is what makes us work, this is what we should focus on. It's 2019, we're overwhelmed with data, we've got more data, we've got more options than we've ever had. Do you think that plays a negative role as well as a positive role?
So I'll come back to businesses that work and then we'll touch on, say, data. Businesses that work, the main kind of point that I see in businesses that work is that what they're delivering makes sense. They've got an addressable marketplace. They know what problem they're solving for their customers and they do it consistently. And the word customer exists in their life. They understand they're serving someone. And I don't think that you can replace that kind of focus on what's the problem I'm solving, how can I do it consistently, and are my customers happy and comfortable. When it comes to business though, data is ubiquitous, it's everywhere now, and the reality is that you've got to be smart at using it. But you've also got to work out what's critical to your business. Noah, a colleague of mine in Brisbane, used to work with the Mars family in the US, massive private office, and he asked the CEO of that business, one of the Mars family members, what are the things you look at, all the data points you look at? He said, I only look at 3 things. I look at brand health, cash flow, and the engagement of my staff. So I'm not saying they're the 3 things for every business, but if you can take a business that's a $600 billion family, if you can take a business empire that large and distill it to 3 critical KPIs that you watch intently, then I can't understand why smaller businesses in Australia can't say, here's the 5 things that make a difference, and I'm going to watch them intently. I either see people who get caught up in so much data they don't know how to use it, or they have no information on their businesses. It's amazing how you've got both ends of that spectrum.
Yeah.
Very few people have a really simple, data-driven view of the world, but focus on key elements and just assess them consistently. It's a bit like that. They fail to plan. They also fail to understand what the trigger points are. Yeah. Margin, supply chain, costs, revenue, all those little things you need to have. What are the key elements and how you keep an eye on it?
Yeah. You mentioned in line with that part of it is obviously understanding and keeping that customer drive first. You have to be able to be aware that this is the problem that I solve for people, or we solve as an organisation. This is what we do. This is why we do it. This is how we do it.
That's why we exist, yeah.
This is why we exist. Is that what keeps you, what is it that you're trying to solve now? And is that what keeps you motivated beyond the fact of you've had financial success?
Yeah,
a lot of people get into business for financial success. You've had financial success and you're still...
Oh, don't get me wrong, I get up every day because I want to continue to be successful.
Yeah.
And whether that be for financial success or personal success with regard to being able to share ideas. I think that's part of it now. I've been lucky enough, and I do mean lucky enough, to learn lots of stuff from lots of people, lots of situations.
Yeah.
And the moment I have a conversation with someone and it triggers a thought with them, is really an interesting and fulfilling moment for me. I was with a group of people in Bundaberg yesterday doing a speech, and at the end of it, one of the fellows walked up and he said, "Hey, that piece you talked about with regard to teams and personality mixes, I can now work out why two guys in my team just can't get on. Because I can see they're both tigers and we haven't got them structured well." I go, "Well, how are you going to solve that?" He goes, "Oh, that's the next thing I got to think about." He said, "But you've got me thinking." I know, there's no better response someone says than "you got me thinking."
Yeah.
And I think maybe that gets me out of bed a lot of days. For me, I want to get thinking. I get up and I read a paper, I watch a news show on BBC or CNN or whatever the case is, just to get something, and you never know what might drop.
Yeah.
You know, thinking about what's happening in the US versus China trade wars, and you know, China's controlling all the rare earth assets so that they're actually going to get the US back when it comes to not supplying it, so they'll win that war. They're selling US treasuries, which means they're affecting the cost of funds in the US. Little things like that. You go, "How does that affect me today?" I don't know, but it's interesting to know.
Yeah. It's always, this is a theme that's come up again and again. When you're open to seeing what else is happening in the world and seeing that, then you may have that moment yourself of, that's now got me thinking about
epiphany.
something.
Yeah. Look, the worst I am, and it's happened a few times in my life, is when I'm in a business and working really hard in the business, enjoying it, but I don't realise it at the time, but the curtains are closed, the blinkers are on, and every day I'm getting up and just thinking about that business, working it, and I'm caught in almost a rut where I don't stop and say, what's happening in the world outside?
Yeah.
And not just what's happening in the world outside will affect me, because then you're only thinking about things that you already know.
Yeah.
You're not open to new ideas, new perceptions. So I occasionally have an epiphany, go, wow, whoa, stop, open your mind. And it's like the curtains get opened. And you get up and you go, hang on, I didn't even notice. Honestly, didn't even notice that was in the living room. I didn't actually notice that the sports section had changed in the Courier Mail from X to Y. Wow. So I don't know how you can address that other than stop and check and go, am I thinking a little bit outside the frame of what I do every day? Because you just don't know what you can get from it. It's also really interesting stuff. It's fulfilling.
This is why I love what I do, because I work with multiple different industries, I work with different people. I see the same things happen same problems in this business, different industry, same problems in this business, different way, same principle. We're just going to apply it differently to them. Is there a learning or an example that you could share that you've gone, you know what, I've seen all kinds of different businesses. This business over here had this, and now we applied that over here.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I see in businesses that constantly ends up being their Achilles heel is complexity.
Yeah.
Looking at a situation and making it more complex.
Yeah.
So, we have a problem and I solve more complexity. We had a mortgaging business in India. Believe it or not, we went over and set that up, and we walked in and they had a process that took 127 steps to do a mortgage. We did a review and they wanted to add 20 more. And we said, no, can we make it more simple? And we broke it down to 21 steps. And I've seen that time and time again, when what you've got is a process, somewhat complex, and the way you make it better is put more complexity. More checks, more balances, more fail points in some ways. So I've seen that time and time again. I've also seen situations whereby people let an individual in a team change the culture.
Yeah.
and that is bad recruitment or bad management. It doesn't matter. They come into an environment and they change the culture. And the effect of many versus one. So that old adage, I've got to protect the core and sometimes I've got to exercise the issue. Yeah. And it's a principle that's, in the battle and, the generals over the years have had to do that. You've got to look after the core of your business, your culture, your team, and never let a negative influence come in. And I've seen that destroy businesses.
It's cancerous. It's all, we can continue the cliches, but there's nobody is bigger than the team.
No way.
No star player is bigger than the team.
And you've got to make that clear that, as in any footy side or any kind of sporting side, if you're not playing for the team to win, I don't want you in the team.
Yeah.
And as magnificent as someone might be in a business environment, I just won't accept when they're not playing for the team, because it'll kill your culture, and you'll be years trying to recover that.
Yeah.
And culture's a word that's thrown about too much, but it's the environment of the way people do business within your business.
Yeah.
The things that are unsaid that they know, the things that they know are the values, the structures that won't change, and that behaviour that won't be accepted. Remember, the behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you allow.
Yeah.
And you've got to call it hard. Leadership's all about defining those things.
Yeah. It's an omission on that side is just as dangerous. It's in the word that I'm looking. It's an acceptance of, okay, well that was rubbish behaviour, but because I've said nothing and because I've let it slide, I've overtly said to everybody that that's okay. We'll tolerate that.
No, silence is not gold in that regard. So be a bloody leader. Get off the fence and make a statement around that.
How do people have difficult conversations like that in 2019, where everybody is at the most sensitive as a society I think we've ever been?
You've just got to be pretty direct around it and set the framework up that we're just going to have honest, direct discussions.
Sure.
And be illustrative. So when you're giving feedback, use examples.
Yeah.
Being general and being vague just doesn't help in any way, shape or form. So give examples, set specifics, but also I do in interactions with employees or when I talk to people, I say let the staff member give you their perception.
Yeah.
So you can work out where you're coming from and getting alignment. Don't be a leader that just proposes, this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And that takes a little bit of stewardship for yourself to step back and listen. And when you listen, you can get a perception. You'll learn a lot more listening to what someone's saying about their performance than you telling them about their performance.
Do you think part of the key of that is frequency? Personally, I hate a 12-month review. Like, if you work for me and I have to wait 12 months...
I could work for you.
Yeah, maybe. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be the tables have turned? If you work for me and it takes 12 months for me to give you some feedback on this is how you're going, this is what I'm happy with, we're lost.
Complete
at that
bullshit.
Point.
So
do you think that it's specific and more frequent?
Definitely. I think, and the reality there is, even when you're doing engagement surveys with staff once every 12 months, 2 years, asking 70 questions, what a load of crap.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to find out the pulse much quicker than that. The world's moving faster today than it used to move. So the old frameworks of an annual review and an annual, which aligns to salary, it's crazy. It shouldn't just be about reviewing for payment. It's reviewing for performance and engagement. So, frequency, whether you're checking in with them on a weekly, monthly, fortnightly basis, that's up to your rhythm.
Yeah.
But be consistent with it. The worst thing you do is check it with them every month for 6 months and then not for 12 months, and they'll think something's wrong. Again, I was with some people yesterday, and there was a lady from a large government institution. She said, we've got a real problem with engagement. I go and ask them all the time how they're feeling, but it's not getting any better. I said, well, they're not taking any ownership of how they're feeling. It's not your job to go and ask how they're feeling.
Yeah.
It's your job to help them get in a position whereby they can give you the communication to do their best and feel good about that.
Yeah.
The old days where I've got to look after staff morale and got to make sure everyone's happy all the time, well, that's a bit of BS. You've got to set a framework up that they can perform well, do their job, enjoy it, and give you feedback if they don't, and listen.
Which comes back to that outcomes point of how do you give somebody the outcomes that you need them to try? Yeah. This is your role. This is what we need from you. This is they all link together, which comes back to the strategy piece. And in a
do they understand the strategy?
Yeah.
So mate, I always make sure people write down what it is that their objectives are and what they believe their responsibilities are. So it's not they tell me what I've told them. They're telling me what it is they're doing.
Yeah.
And that just means you clarify very quickly any differentials between your expectations and theirs.
Yeah.
And then you can fill in the gaps rather than they're basically just parroting back to you what you've told them. Yeah. So have they really learned it? I love people who take notes when you talk. to them, or when I take notes when they talk to me, and it's just my way of perceiving things. Otherwise, people have just got really good memories, and I don't think that is the case all the time, because 5% gets retained after a day, and who knows where it goes a week after that.
And it's getting shorter and shorter. Our attention span and our memories are shorter.
So what did you just say?
What did you say?
Yeah. But yeah, there's so many other factors, and you're having a meeting with someone, and honestly, they're looking at their phone, checking a Facebook feed.
Yeah.
What? Really?
Yeah.
So look, I think the art of this, the conversation, a good question, you ask great questions, it's being lost. I'm really worried about it.
Yeah.
And you know, Marty, for you and every conversation I've ever had with you, you ask really good questions. And I get this feeling that it's not that you're just trying to ask the question, you really want to know the answer. And after that, you ask the next question, and it's a real skill that honestly more people need.
Well, for me, I think it comes from a necessity. I don't think it was ever something that I consciously wanted to do. It just came from...
Just don't know.
I want to understand the problem. I've always been a fan of, like, I want to have my cake and eat it too. You know?
Well, you've got your mind works in a process way.
Yes.
Where you need to know A to get to B to get to C, and once you understand that process, great, I can redesign that for you.
Yeah.
It's your facilities management background, mate.
Well, I think it just comes from I look at things in a simple way. Business is complex. We've got more things going on. Life is as complex as it has ever been.
Yeah.
But does it really need to be?
Oh, break it down to simple. Yeah.
How do you keep things simple? You have more like people think, oh yeah, I've got so much going on, I've got so much. You're managing more things in your life than most of us will. How do you keep things simple?
I think I do try to dedicate, if I've got a problem, I'll dedicate some thinking time to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not a good juggler of multiple things at the same time.
Yeah.
In a day, yes, but you know, if you've got something you're in the middle of, and then you try to do something else, I find I lose focus.
Yeah.
So if I am going to put something down, I really do put it down.
Yeah.
Walk away, do something else, then come back with a clearer mind.
Yeah.
So simplifying for me is about focus on what I'm working on at that point in time. Then just give myself some time to go for a bloody walk, read a paper, watch half an hour of a news program.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that the mind gets a little bit of stimulus.
Yeah.
Might not solve the problem I was thinking about, but I've just rebased a bit.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just probably the word compartmentalising, dealing with the challenge you got. If you can't solve it, outsource it or come back to it.
Yeah. It comes. I feel like a broken record here, but we keep coming back to balance. There's a balance of thinking and assessing and really determining what the problem is, taking some time away, come back to that, and then being able to say, okay, well, I've thought about that for long enough. I know enough to start. Let's get started and do something.
Or I know enough to know I can't solve that, and I'm smart enough to go, you know what? Let's go and talk to an expert. Right. Look, you and I have talked about work-life balance, and I'm a bit of a prescriber that says you own that. No one else. You can't outsource that.
Yeah.
And it will never be perfect, because the moment it's perfect is the moment that becomes imperfect. So it's just up to you to be aware of it. Most importantly, those around you be aware of it. And if you want someone else to help you hold account to it, just tell them what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
And then give them the license to call you on your behaviour. And if you call you on your bullshit, we'll reward you when you've done something that shows you're actually adhering to the balance you seek.
Yeah.
Whether it be family, sport, spiritual, business success, personal kind of development, just keep addressing it, but it'll never be perfect. I don't want to, espouse to you get perfection.
Yeah.
Everyone, when they reach that summit, kind of goes, oh, there's another summit. And the other thing is just enjoy the bloody journey. It's not a destination world.
Yeah.
Enjoy the journey. Every day, get up and go, 2 arms, 2 legs, fresh air to breathe. What else do I need?
Yeah. What's Dr. Seuss, 2 feet and a heartbeat. You can take yourself anywhere you
go,
please.
Man, I haven't read Horton Hears a Who for years,
advice in children's books, mate. Some of the best.
Clearly, Harvard Business Review for
Harvard
some,
Business Review
Dr.
for
Seuss
some,
for
Dr.
others.
Seuss for others. It just depends on where you fit. I think, thank you for your time, mate.
Mate, it's a pleasure seeing you, mate.
There's just so many simple things that it comes back to. Like the fact that we're sitting here comes back to one of the most simple things is maintaining great relationships. We're here due to mutual friends.
Make connections.
Make good connections. Mate, thank you for your time.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it.
All the best.